Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are diving headfirst into one of the most, well, intellectually provocative and emotionally complex concepts in modern psychoanalytic thought.
hmm
This is a topic that I think really redefines what a professional helping relationship can look like.
It absolutely does.
We're undertaking a deep dive into Anaclitic Countertransference, or AC. Our mission, really, is to understand how an analyst's most sort of raw, primitive, even surprising emotional responses become these vital, missing building blocks for a patient's emotional maturity.
Yeah, it's the ultimate therapeutic tightrope walk, isn't it?
Yeah.
AC gets right to the heart of a crucial problem. How do we respond genuinely to a person's intense emotional deficit?
That feeling of need.
Exactly, the profound feeling of need that comes from, childhood neglect or inconsistency.
Mhm.
How do you respond without simply falling into repetition? How do you offer the good mothering or, good fathering they never had without becoming pathologically tangled in their past?
That distinction is it's everything, isn't it? Because when most people hear countertransference, they think, uh-oh, warning signs.
Right, red flags.
Yeah.
The analyst making it about themselves.
Exactly. But AC is different. As we read in the material, AC is when the patient induces feelings in the analyst. These specific feelings that the patient desperately needed, but, well, never got in early life. So the feelings aren't the analyst's personal baggage being recycled. They are, like, targeted emotional requirements for the patient to finally grow up.
And what's so fascinating about this process, I think, is the crucial psychological boundary it establishes.
Yeah.
You see, pathological countertransference is when the analyst is just a puppet, right? Repeating the patient's old script.
Yeah.
AC, though, is what the source calls a maturational induction. The analyst feels the need, crucially, has the ability to meet it, and because they do it constructively, the patient finally gets to experience the analyst as a separate object.
A separate object? Wow, that is a massive concept. For you listening, this means the patient doesn't just see the analyst as, I don't know, an echo of their withholding mother or their absent father.
Right.
They see you as a new, safe figure, someone capable of giving them something real and new. It's like the first time they've been able to tell the difference between the helper and the historical figures who let them down.
Precisely. The analyst is essentially using their own emotional life as a kind of corrective technology, if you will. If the patient only ever learned that love equals inconsistency or maybe even danger, the analyst has to provide these consistent, contained, and sometimes, shockingly intense feelings that demonstrate a whole new emotional equation. Care equals growth.
Okay, let's unpack that. How do these basic emotional needs actually show up in the session? We're starting at the most sort of primitive level here, where AC addresses these really foundational, often pre-verbal needs.
Yeah.
We're talking about feelings that sound, well, honestly, far from professional, like they belong in a nursery.
Precisely. And that's okay. These AC feelings, linked to basic nurturing, are fundamentally connected to the earliest stages of parenthood. When these targeted responses are genuine, they literally expand the patient's emotional repertoire. It's like giving them the emotional grammar they should have learned as a toddler but didn't.
The examples in the reading are just striking. The most common one seems to be simple soothing. When a patient is agitated or, emotionally overwhelmed, the analyst feels this impulse to calm them. I was completely struck by that story, the patient having a panic attack after a really painful breakup.
Oh, yeah.
And the analyst felt this overwhelming, almost primitive need to contain the distress and found himself murmuring, almost without thinking, "Sweet little pumpkin, everything will be all right."
Yeah, and that kind of reaction, it sounds shocking, right? Because it seems to violate every rule of analytic distance.
Totally.
But it's an authentic, necessary response to what is essentially infantile terror surfacing in the adult. The analyst is modeling in that moment that overwhelming feelings can be contained. And if we connect this to the broader idea, this is linked to the impulse to feed.
And again, we're not talking literal food here necessarily, though the impulse itself feels visceral.
Right. It's the symbolic offering of comfort, emotional sustenance, life-sustaining materials. It's the analyst proving, non-verbally often, that they desire the patient's physical and emotional well-being. It's a really authentic expression of the desire for maturation.
Absolutely. The case material shows this symbolic feeding in so many ways, like the analyst feeling an impulse to recommend specific, simple recipes
Yeah, I remember that one.
to a chronically overwhelmed patient, not because they're a chef, but because the patient desperately needed that sense of caretaking, It's Self-sustenance, simplifying life tasks, symbolize, I want you to be healthy and fed, body and soul.
Or that other case, giving a patient the perfect book to read, like a piece of symbolic intellectual food.
Right, at the exact moment they needed it.
Exactly. And that confirms to the patient, maybe on a very deep level, someone cares enough about my survival, my growth, to know exactly what I need right now.
It's incredibly validating.
So once the analyst can provide that basic sort of internal containment, that soothing and feeding, the next phase of maturation requires tackling much harder, more challenging emotions. Protection.
Ah, okay.
AC plays a critical role here by establishing these vital maturational boundaries, these protective impulses. They shield the patient from both external threats like antagonists in their lives and internal threats like their own self-destructive impulses.
Okay, let's look at external protection first, because this is where the feelings can become actively, well, aggressive, right?
Yes.
The analyst starts experiencing not just compassion, but this kind of righteous anger on the patient's behalf. The source gives that powerful example, the analyst working with a woman whose boss just habitually yelled at her.
Mm-hmm.
And the analyst initially saw the patient's passive aggression as the main problem, but then through AC felt the sheer blinding rage on her behalf.
And that rage was the induction. The analyst suddenly realized, oh, her parents, her husband, they systematically failed to protect her throughout her life.
Wow.
And the resulting impulse, the feeling, was to go find the boss and yell, leave her alone. Now, obviously, the analyst doesn't do that.
Right, right. But wait, how do you stop that feeling from becoming the analyst's own personal crusade? You know, if I feel rage on your behalf, how do I keep it therapeutic and not just my own stuff, my desire to fight injustice?
That's the absolute core difference between AC and pathology. The analyst contains the impulse, but uses the feeling diagnostically and therapeutically. It helps the patient locate the reality of the situation.
Okay.
The goal isn't for the analyst to yell at the boss. The goal is for the patient to finally internalize the knowledge that someone believes they deserve to be protected. The analyst is basically lending them their ego strength until the patient can stand up for themselves.
I see. Okay. And that protective function also extends inward, right? Acting like an external guidance system against self-destruction.
Exactly. This is classic limit setting. When the patient engages in destructive behavior outside the session, the analyst sometimes has to provide the structure the patient never had internally.
Mm-hmm.
Precisely. In cases of ongoing self-sabotage, the analyst sometimes has to risk sounding incredibly directive. Think of that patient married to an alcoholic husband.
Yeah.
The analyst realized the therapeutic task wasn't just empathy, it was to tell the patient directly, he needs to stop drinking or you need to leave. The analyst acts as the temporary external structure that forces reality testing.
Or the other example, advising the woman with those deeply self-sabotaging sexual impulses to just slow down, wait a week between dates. The analyst is effectively saying, look, I will be the external break you never had because I know you deserve better than this pattern.
It's a form of protective care.
Okay, so now we move into feelings that really challenge our usual perception of professional distance. These complex, sometimes internally conflicted emotions, love, pride, admiration, and even contained aggression directed at the patient.
Right. And the feeling of truly wanting the patient, of delighting in them. It's perhaps the most fundamental aspect of AC in some ways. Think about the joy a parent takes in a child simply existing.
Not for any achievement, just them.
Just them. This feeling, being loved and accepted inherently, is absolutely foundational for mature self-esteem.
The source illustrates this so beautifully with that male patient. The one who came in radiating arrogance and rudeness.
Oh yeah, the anti-groupie hate feeling.
Exactly, that visceral repulsion toward the inflated ego. But then after a few sessions, the analyst's feelings shifted completely to intense affection. They simply wanted him, not sexually obviously, but profoundly in relationship with him.
And the patient picked up on that.
Yeah. Responding to that genuine desire, he began to feel wanted and valued, maybe for the first time.
It's that crucial difference between admiring someone's performance and loving their core character. And that delight, that wanting, it naturally translates into pride and admiration.
Yeah.
The analyst has to be able to feel genuinely proud of the patient's achievements, big or small. And this is critical because it models the healthy parental response that actually facilitates separation.
How so?
Well, you have to be able to celebrate your child's success, even when it means they might not need you in the same way anymore. That's healthy letting go.
I love the example of the chronically disorganized patient,
Yeah.
always sick, overwhelmed, who finally cleaned his apartment.
Yes. and made plans to improve his living space.
And the analyst felt this overwhelming pride, treating this seemingly trivial self-care act not as just, a professional checkmark,
Not at all.
but as a huge, deeply personal step towards self-management. That genuine felt pride is what the patient takes in.
And this emotional spectrum, to be complete, also has to include the tolerance of aggressive and critical feelings directed towards the patient. This is where the risk definitely increases.
Yeah.
The analyst has to allow their own anger or frustration to serve a maturational purpose, providing contained reality testing. It shows the patient that they can handle reality, including someone else's anger, and that anger doesn't automatically mean devastation or abandonment.
The source mentioned that patients who rely heavily on passive aggression often only start to progress when the analyst becomes appropriately angry
Yes.
and sets realistic boundaries. The analyst is modeling what a contained, directed, and crucially survivable expression of anger looks like. It's an integration skill they should have learned way back.
It's like emotional regulation 101, delivered much later in life.
Okay, let's move to maybe the most nuanced and challenging clusters of AC feelings, starting with competition and jealousy.
These feelings tend to get induced as the patient moves into real adult individuation. That necessary psychological process of, surpassing the parent or the mentor figure.
Which the analyst often represents.
Exactly. So the analyst has to contain that feeling of being superseded, maybe even feeling a bit redundant. The challenge here is resisting the impulse to somehow prove you're still superior or more knowledgeable.
Which the patient might unconsciously test, right?
Right.
Especially if they are highly competitive or envious themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the analyst has to accept that feeling of competition, maybe feeling a twinge of professional inadequacy if the patient achieves something quickly, but then use that feeling as data.
Okay.
The analyst's task is to provide adult affirmation, acknowledging the patient's success and power without feeling personally diminished by it. That allows the patient to fully own their achievements.
It's about letting the bird fly the nest.
In celebrating that loss of control,
Yes.
essentially.
Wow. Which brings us to perhaps the most sensitive area of all, anaclitic sexual feelings.
Yes. And it's absolutely crucial here to understand that these feelings are not about seduction or boundary violation.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Okay, good clarification.
It's more a complex blend of sort of residual infantilism and emerging adult sexuality, often rooted in that basic parental delight in the child's aliveness, their emerging charm, their physical being, not in an overt sexual way.
So the maturational function is key again. It's about the analyst appreciating the patient as a developing, attractive human being, and this is crucial, affirming the patient's capacity for adult equal relationships gradually.
Yes, gradually.
Yeah.
It validates their emerging sexuality in a very contained, non-exploitative way.
We see this so clearly in that case, the patient described as having a deeply submissive and masochistic streak. Initially, the analyst felt a kind of mildly contemptuous pity for her lack of self-respect.
Right, a common enough initial reaction, perhaps.
But over months, as the patient slowly developed assertiveness, the analyst realized their own internal perception shifted. They began to genuinely see the patient as an attractive, sexual, and actually powerful person.
And that shift in the analyst's perception from that contemptuous pity to a genuine, albeit contained, appreciation or attraction was instrumental.
What so?
It was the AC serving as this subtle, contained encouragement towards adult self-possession. It helped her move beyond submission and start asserting her own power and desires in the world, knowing she could be seen that way without being exploited.
Okay. So if we kind of synthesize this whole journey from murmuring sweet little pumpkin to feeling protective rage to feeling genuine pride and finally to affirming their adult sexual capacity, Anaclitic Countertransference really demands that the analysts utilize their entire emotional self.
It absolutely does. It's fundamentally about responding with these targeted feelings that provide the corrective emotional roadmap the patient requires for full maturation. It's using the relationship to fill in the developmental gaps.
That feels like the real takeaway for you, the listener. This concept shows us that complex, meaningful relationships, whether therapeutic or just in life, thrive when feelings, even the ones we label as unprofessional, like anger or intense affection, are understood not as just self-indulgent repetitions of trauma, but as potentially necessary, precise emotional levers, enabling growth and healthy separation. It's like a shortcut to being a functional adult when maybe the user manual was lost at birth.
That's a great way to put it. And this raises, I think, an important question for you to consider listening to this. If the analyst has to learn to distinguish between a simple personal reaction and a maturational induction, how does recognizing that difference potentially change the way you interpret and respond to the most difficult emotional demands made by the challenging relationships in your own life?